Greetings, my name is Cosmic and I am the creator of the multimedia edutainment project Cosmic's Therapy Creatures. In this video, I will be going over the lore for Pinphri the Anxiety Creature, while the speed draw of this creature's model pack plays in the background. Pinphri, also known as Timorgressus aves, are quadruped birds who have lost the ability to fly due to their tendency to run into things whenever they are overcome with anxiety. With their drastic evolutionary changes, it may be more fitting to identify the Pinphri species as dinosaurs rather than birds, as they seem to be evolving in a direction to become a creature that has less to be fearful of. They have become a very sturdy bunch who, while still easily startled, have developed a variety of coping mechanisms to help them calm down. Their brightly colored feathers help confuse any would-be predators as the Pinphri flee from danger, and are also quite soft to the touch. Pinphris are almost always in a state of fight or flight, and to help expel excess amounts of energy, they shake their tails and flutter their vestigial winglets. As a result of previously always bumping into it, Pinphris have developed the ability to see glass. They find glass to be a very fascinating substance and will often carry around magnifying glasses with them to help them remember to always interact with the world through multiple perspectives and not just one of anxiety. For ease of use, many Pinphris tie magnifying glasses or other rounded glass pieces on a string or bind and put it around their necks, like a necklace or collar. While they are not a technologically developed species, Pinphri can be taught basic commands, hold and manipulate small objects, and mimic certain sounds. In therapy, Pinphris help people stay mindful and in the moment and demonstrate difference between feelings of anxiety and stress. Stress is caused by an external trigger and will dissipate once the trigger becomes absent, while anxiety is defined by persistent, excessive worries that do not dissipate even when no stressor is present. When a Pinphri notices that a person seems anxious, they will practice their favorite coping mechanisms, such as deep breathing or disruption, to help the person relax as well. Pinphri history: Birds of a Thunder. Despite their current mammalian-looking form, the Pinphri are actually descended from a lineage of avians who traded flight for the ability to fight. The Pinphri have always been an easily startled species who would take to the skies at even the slightest of things. But as glass became a mainstay in human structures, the Pinphri began to die out due to consistently flying into glass as they fled the scene. The Pinphri who stayed on the ground and fled by running started becoming the main survivors of the species. Over time, their wings turned into arms that allowed them to run faster. They grew tiny little claws to give them the ability to climb with ease. Their beaks and talons sharpened for fending off would-be predators. They were still extremely clumsy in this transitional phase, however. Constantly knocking into things while not looking while they're running resulted in their once hollow bones becoming solid, heavy, and dense. As they acclimated to life on the ground, their eyes shifted to adapt to their surroundings. The Pinphri's once small and beady eyes enlarged and gave them the ability to see in the shadows of the forest. This change in eye structure also came with the ability to finally see the glass that previous generations had flown into. Going from something that was once invisible to their species to being able to observe it made glass a fixation for the Pinphris. They marveled at how glass twisted in distorted light, as well as how it could appear in different colors and shapes. Looking through glass helped them gain new perspectives on their surroundings and, by extension, new perspectives on life itself. In the first handful of generations that gained the ability to see glass, sitting in front of windows to watch the reflections change over time became a sort of pastime for the species. People didn't really appreciate having hundreds of eyes looking into their windows, though, even if the Pinphri were just looking at the reflections and not what was on the other side of the glass. So they were often scared off of human properties with lots of shouting and arm waving. When the Pinphri would run away, it sounded like thunderclouds rolling off into the distance. Constantly being shooed and scared away from anywhere they gathered did not help with the Pinphri's flighty nature. Soon they began to become anxious about angry creatures jumping out from behind anything while they were minding their business. They developed very large ears to detect what they could not see. If they did not hear any movements behind an object, they would assume it was safe and settle down. But as soon as they heard something, they prepared to fight or flee the moment the source of the sound became visible. Since they were always being chased away from the object of their fixation, many Pinphris began to carry any small pieces of glass they could find around their necks. Having this physical reminder to look at things from various angles eventually led to the Pinphri species developing various coping mechanisms to handle their ever-increasing anxieties about the world. Pinphri biology: Twitchy little flutterings. Pinphri are very energetic quadrupedal creatures standing between 14 to 20 inches high, not including their tall pointy ears. They primarily have orange and yellow feathers, though they also sport black and white feathers around their necks and towards their hindquarters. The clashing orange, black, and white colors give the Pinphri the ability to confuse any would-be predators as they dash away from or tremble before their fears. Their large green eyes pop out against their otherwise warm colors, and are as large as they are to give the Pinphri the ability to navigate in the dark and detect even the slightest of movement in their peripheral vision. A unique note about the eyes of the Pinphri is, unlike most avians, they can perceive glass. The beak of the Pinphri is small and slightly curved, perfect for precisely grabbing and cracking open seeds and grains. Their beaks are also sharp enough to shred and consume fruits and vegetables. Their large ears allow them to pick up on the quietest of sounds and discover new information about their environment. The purple tufts on the tips of their ears and tails are actually a bundle of nerves that, when energized, spiral around wildly and allow the Pinphri to release excess energy. Their 5 spiraling tails are primarily used to help release this energy and act as extensions of the purple tufts, but they are also used for balance and to make the Pinphri appear larger and scarier than they actually are in the face of predators. The Pinphri may also release excess energy by fluffing and fluttering their feathers, particularly the feathers around their vestigial winglets. Their vestigial wings evolved to take on the form of legs, giving the Pinphri 3 claws on their front legs and 2 claws on their hind legs. Due to the front legs having once been wings, the skeletal structure of their front and hind legs is noticeably different. Their hind legs are built more for springing into action and running, while their front legs are more adapted for climbing, foraging, and if necessary, fighting. The Pinphri are almost always in a state of fight or flight. This overwhelming anxiety they carry with them has helped them stay alive, but it also causes them to fight or flee from situations even when no real danger is present. Their claws and beak are sharp enough to provide some offense in a fight, but the Pinphri are really built for fleeing and getting into hard-to-reach places than they are for fighting. Most avians have hollow bones that allow for flight, but due to the Pinphri's extremely flighty nature and loss of flight, they have extremely heavy and dense bones. When fleeing from perceived danger, they tend to not always look where they are going and bump into things. If their bones were still hollow, they would be breaking them all the time for moving full force into various objects. Their heavy and dense bones prevent such injuries from occurring as they flee. They are rather hardy creatures despite how easily spooked they are. All of these evolutionary differences has resulted in some folks thinking of the Pinphri as closer to a modern dinosaur rather than a bird. The diet of the Pinphri is that of an herbivore with a preference towards foods that activate their parasympathetic nervous system, which is the part of the nervous system responsible for making creatures relax. Since the Pinphri are often overactivating their sympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for the fight or flight response, consuming foods that activate the parasympathetic nervous system help them relax and balance their energy levels. Whole grains, fruits, and vegetables all activate the parasympathetic nervous system and help the Pinphri enter a state of rest and digest. To obtain their food, Pinphri will build their nests on the edges of forests that border lush fields. They try to avoid being out in the open for prolonged periods of time to avoid being snatched up by any predators while eating their lunch. Pinphri are occasionally hunted and eaten by predators, but they overassume the actual danger they are in quite often because most predators don't really like to eat the meat of the Pinphris. Their muscles are thin, stringy, and salty, and their bones are so dense they can break the teeth of other creatures when bitten into. More often, the Pinphri are hunted for their soft feathers. When they are extremely stressed, they shed their feathers, and so some predators will scare them on purpose to get them to drop their feathers that can then be used to build comfy nests. The feathers are also high in adrenaline, and some predators eat them like a drug. Pinphri psychology: letting the anxiety pass. As extremely anxious creatures, let us explore what exactly anxiety is before delving into the perceptions of the Pinphri. According to the American Psychological Association, anxiety is an emotion characterized by apprehension and somatic symptoms of tension in which an individual anticipates impending danger, catastrophe, or misfortune. The body often mobilizes itself to meet the perceived threat. Muscles become tense, breathing is faster, and the heart beats more rapidly. Anxiety is considered a future-oriented, long-acting response broadly focused on a diffuse threat. Anxiety is a normal reaction to stress and will pass when the stressor is no longer present. However, most Pinphri have anxiety disorders, which is characterized by persistent anxiety even when no stressor is present, or blowing things out of proportion when a stressor is present and impairs their ability to function on a day-to-day basis. Their anxiety has helped keep them alive and stay wary of predators or threats. But often the Pinphri are so fearful of what might occur that it prevents them from taking the necessary actions to survive. They may starve themselves if they worry about the potential of a predator appearing despite not having been present before. Or they may flee from a completely harmless creature or object simply because they expect the worst. To survive and overcome their anxieties, the Pinphri have developed several coping methods to keep their lines of thought in reality, and not a never-ending spiral of what-ifs. Most often, the Pinphri exhibit anxiety around fear of failure, fear of rejection or abandonment, or fear of death or injury. The Pinphri also carry magnifying glass or colorful smooth pieces of glass to help them remember that there is always more than one way to view the world. Sometimes when a Pinphri is extremely anxious, they will look through the piece of glass they carry to force themselves to view the situation in a new perspective. The first calming technique the Pinphri have been observed utilizing is relaxation training. They may focus on deep breathing to calm themselves or engage in repetitive physical exercises to release pent-up anxiety. When simply fluttering their wings and purple tufts isn't enough, they may pace, jump, climb, or run to tire themselves out and relax. Pinphri have also been observed engaging in worry exposure, where they will stay near to something despite being afraid of it. Most often when they do this, the Pinphri will be accompanied by a comfort object that helps them stay grounded in reality. Pinphris have a tendency to latch onto certain objects like rocks, sticks, or moss in the wild, and smooth pieces of glass, small pillows, or spoons in domestication. They may also work up the courage to confront whatever is causing them anxiety directly and overcome it. The more support a Pinphri has from other Pinphris or from friendly creatures, the more likely they are to engage in problem-solving behaviors. Pinphri have also been known to participate in disruption, in which the Pinphri will begin to engage in forms of play to disrupt their worries rather than fleeing from them. The act of play allows the Pinphri to reorganize their thoughts and ponder their worries as they mindlessly interact with an object. And the last behavior they utilize is meditation. When sleeping, Pinphris maintain a certain level of tension within their bodies to prepare them to enter fight or flight at any given moment. But when they meditate, their bodies completely relax despite maintaining consciousness. Pinphri Society, supporting one another. Pinphris in the wild tend to live together as groups ranging from 10 to 50 members. They will nest together, eat together, and travel together as they find safety in numbers. They tend to all build their nests in the same tree with the entrances to these nests facing away from the trunk of the tree. This creates a circle of surveillance and allows the whole group to stay on the lookout for danger while they rest. The higher up in the tree the nest, the less walls there are to allow for a greater view of the surrounding area. The anxiety of one Pinphri may very well alert the entire group, called a spur, into fleeing away from danger. Though with how often the Pinphri engage in fight or flight in even the slightest of threats, sometimes this results in the spur migrating away from an otherwise safe place to live in. To counter any overreactions to a potential threat, the Pinphris try to work together to ground each other and engage in relaxing behaviors. If one Pinphri panics, the others are prone to panic as well. The bravest of the spur will approach whatever the potential threat is before deciding whether to fight, flee, or engage in relaxation. The spur will follow the lead of the Pinphris known to have the most grounded approaches to potential threats. Trust in the spur is what keeps the Pinphris alive. The brave members and the fearful members of a spur keep one another in check. Sometimes the brave Pinphris can be a little too confident in their capabilities and launch themselves straight into danger trying to protect the group. The fearful Pinphris, while they do often overreact to potential threats, remind the brave Pinphris to take caution and to not overestimate their own capabilities. The brave keep the fearful calm, and the fearful keep the brave from putting themselves in harm's way. That being said, a spur does not have to consist only of Pinphris. Domesticated Pinphris show the same trust in the creatures they live with as the Pinphri in the wild shows in their spur. They will adjust their responses to any fears based on how the other creatures they live with react. They may still be more flighty and easily startled than the other creatures they live with, but a domesticated Pinphri still perceives those closest to them as members of their spur. With as sociable as most Pinphri are, they make for popular companions. They are highly emotionally supportive of any humans who take them in, and are known to try to share their favorite relaxation techniques whenever their human seems stressed or scared. It is possible for Pinphris to die of cold, which is why they have so many thick, soft feathers, but luckily their spur will usually huddle around them at night until they grow their feathers back. If a domestic Pinphri loses several feathers, it is recommended to put a polar fleece cape on them until their feathers grow back. Due to their sturdiness, the bones of a deceased Pinphri are occasionally used as reinforcements for various objects. In the wild, when a Pinphri dies, their spur will bury them in what the spur recognizes as the most relaxing place in their territory, so that the dead Pinphri can finally rest in peace forever. In domesticity, when a Pinphri dies, a popular celebration of the Pinphri's life is to have their skeletons encased in their favorite kind of glass. This symbolizes their physical sturdiness and emotional fragility in life. They are usually immortalized in the position of their favorite coping mechanism. How Pinphri assists in therapy. Energy release and reframing. When the brain is anxious, higher levels of thinking are shut down as all energy is redirected to the motor cortex, which is responsible for telling your body when and how to move to prepare one for fight or flight. Anxiety is different from fear in that anxiety is future-oriented, long-lasting response. Anxiety worries about what could happen rather than what is currently happening. Fear, on the other hand, is present-oriented, short-lived response to an obvious and specific threat. An anxious mind is not a logical mind, and the panic anxiety brings cannot simply be explained away. To overcome anxiety, it is important to be patient with oneself or with the person experiencing anxiety, and to engage in relaxing behaviors. By calming the body, the mind by extension will calm as well. The Pinphri are excellent examples of this phenomenon. As very excitable and easily spooked creatures, the Pinphri have several coping mechanisms for countering their own anxiety and for helping one another stay calm. In an animal-assisted therapy session, Pinphri are most helpful for patients dealing with any kind of anxiety. Each Pinphri has a preferred method of grounding and relaxation, and when they sense fear or anxiety in other creatures, they will attempt to share their favorite relaxation method with that creature. Pinphri do this by gently touching the patient, attempting to demonstrate the ways in which they relax, and checking in to see if the patient is mimicking their relaxation technique. These techniques include, but are not limited to, deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, light exercise, or exposure, disruption, or meditation. If the Pinphri notices that the patient is not mimicking the relaxation technique, they will instead crawl on top of the patient and lay either on their lap, shoulders, chest, or in their arms, and put their full weight on them to try to literally weigh them down to the ground. They may also try sharing their favorite comfort object, which is usually a rounded piece of glass or a cool stick that they carry around their necks, with a patient to give them something physical to focus on. It is worth noting that any animal-assisted therapy session with a Pinphri must be conducted in an environment the Pinphri is familiar and comfortable with. Pinphris will require 2 to 5 preparatory visits to any new offices or spaces therapy will be conducted in, so they can be comfortable within the space. If they are thrust into a session in a new environment without acclimating to it first, the Pinphri will be anxious for a bulk of the session. A responsible handler will allow a Pinphri to return to a familiar environment when they notice extreme anxiety in their Pinphri. Besides sharing their favorite relaxation method, Pinphri can also help decrease feelings of anxiety by engaging in physical play. Pinphris love to run, climb, jump, and some even engage in dances. An animal-assisted therapy session with a Pinphri can also look like going outside and playing with the creature, or going into a large open room to run around in. There are also a variety of toys made specifically for Pinphris, such as frisbees that are small enough for them to pick up with their beaks, and shiny pieces of fabric on the end of string for them to attack and chase. Anxiety tries to give one an abundance of energy to engage in fight or flight, and one way to release this excessive energy is to engage in cardiovascular exercise. A small spur, 2 to 5 members, can also be brought into animal-assisted therapy sessions to showcase how a Pinphri spur supports one another. Watching their interactions with one another and with the environment can provide insight on how to approach and resolve potential threats in the patient's life and how to seek out emotional support when they find themselves becoming anxious. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed learning about the ecology for Pinphri the Anxiety Creature. If you'd like to know more about Cosmic's therapy creatures, you can find a PDF of the art book for this project in the description. You can also watch my video on the early design process for this project, or my videos on the lore behind Pinphri's friends, Tolma and Cordals. Thanks again!